Thank you for joining us for another presentation of the design of the Tobin Montessori and Vassal Lane Upper School project. I want to thank you and the other community members that are providing feedback and staying engaged in the public process. Your ideas and suggestions are helping to make this a great project for the city and the neighborhood. I also want to thank the city, school, and design teams that have invested a lot of time and energy into refining the preferred option from the feasibility study into the preliminary design that we will be sharing with you in this presentation. The design you will see in this video is not the final design. We will continue to seek the feedback from the community. During this presentation, we will be discussing the development of the Father Callahan Playground and other outdoor spaces on the site. Additionally, we will share the initial thoughts on materials and building exterior concepts. As you know, demolition will not start until July 2021. Following this video, we will set up teleconferences where you can ask questions and comment on the work in progress. Your input was invaluable in creating the preferred option in the feasibility study, and we are looking forward to continuing the conversation with the neighborhood as the design develops.
Thank you, Louis. We are very excited to be sharing the current state of the design today. First, we will provide some context for where we are in the design process, how the COVID-19 crisis has affected the project, and discuss how you will continue to be able to provide input to our team. Next, we will discuss our ongoing study of transportation on and off-site by focusing on the access to the garage structure beneath the building. Then we will review the state of the design of the site and the building. As the city manager noted, we have been working closely with teachers and city and CPS staff. Several of the members of the design team will be sharing with you today how we have refined the preferred option crossroads in working with them. This schedule shows the design phases of the project. Having completed the feasibility study, we are now in a phase called schematic design. In this phase, we are focusing on refining the plans of the building and the outdoor space, making sure that we have everything organized as best we can within the constraints and opportunities of the site. As we will share later in the presentation, we are also beginning to explore what the building will look like. Schematic design lays the groundwork for subsequent phases of design development, and construction documents. This phase also allows us to prepare a few early sets of permitting packages that will enable the construction manager, W.T. Rich, to begin next year with abatement and demolition and excavation and foundations, while we finish the construction documents for the rest of the building. As we refine the design, we are looking for your continued participation and input. The blue hexagonal shapes show the meetings we have planned going forward, and as you can see, we will hold 2 more meetings during this phase and more in the next phase. And as has been done through feasibility, we are welcoming your input through the city as we move forward. You may be wondering how the COVID crisis has impacted the design and construction process. The most significant change is that the schools will not be moving out of the building this summer as previously planned. The logistics of such a move during the crisis was simply too difficult to orchestrate safely. Accordingly, the schools will stay on site through the end of the school year, and this will move the start of demolition and remediation to the summer of 2021. As I will discuss in a moment, traffic changed significantly during the crisis, and we have also had to rethink the traffic studies that were planned for this past spring. But overall, the project design remains on schedule. Thankfully, we had a contingency planned into the project, and these adjustments have not, at this time, significantly impacted the design team. We will continue to update the schedule as the crisis continues to develop. Project goals include creating an environment that fosters health and wellness, and the design already includes good daylight, operable windows, dedicated outdoor air units, and MERV 13 air filters. Given the current crisis, we have been reviewing the building and all of our projects for ways to further enhance these goals. Some measures have an impact on the layout of the building, which is especially important to review at this stage. We have been testing a variety of restroom layouts for improved safety and to encourage students to wash their hands, and adding hand washing stations near entrances in the cafeteria. At the same time, we are investigating how the building could change to a health emergency mode. One example would be increased ventilation. This allows us to design for an even safer environment while still meeting the project's safety and energy goals during normal use. In later design phases, we will pay special attention to the products we select, including materials and touchless technologies. We are fully committed to both a full traffic analysis and parking, transportation, and demand management plan. As I'm sure we have all noticed, traffic has been significantly reduced during the COVID crisis, but we still need to perform a transportation assessment. And it may not return to prior levels either when schools return in the fall. So we are tapping existing data, including anonymous cell phone location data collected before the crisis, to assess travel patterns and volumes representative of typical pre-COVID traffic levels. Even without that data, working with our traffic engineers, we have been able to refine the design in response to your comments. Dan, why don't you tell us more about how that work is progressing?
Thanks, Carolyn. As you'll recall from the feasibility study, the building components have been gathered to the south side of the site to preserve and enhance the amenities of Father Callanan Playground. We'll talk a little more about how we've been reimagining the amenities of the playground and what it can offer and how the green space may be developed. We imagine that the school will be delicately interconnected to the outdoor space. The site will have wonderful recreational space, including community pathways that connect bicycle and pedestrian routes to the neighborhood and Fresh Pond. In terms of vehicular access, we are studying traffic patterns around the site. We're also planning an on-site bus loop for student drop-off and pickup on the west side of the site, closest to Fresh Pond. Since the feasibility study, we have been considering how cars will be introduced into the 150-space garage under the building. One of the goals of the feasibility study was to make the drop-off and pickup process work more efficiently and safely. One strategy to avoid unsafe conflicts between cars and buses is to separate each type of vehicle as they arrive on the site. To achieve this, in each option, roughly where the existing curb cut is on the west, buses will arrive on site and have their own drop-off in the west corner of the site, near the south side of the Armory site. This location offers the best opportunity for the buses to arrive, queue, and exit the site. With that one constant, let's walk through the options for car arrival that we are currently studying. The first option for cars arriving on site is what was shown in the feasibility study. As I mentioned, the buses will arrive on the west side of the site, and in this option, the cars will arrive on the east. On the east, a ramp down to the garage, similar to the ramp to the parking garage at the Cambridge Central Library, will be accessed through a new curb cut. This option removes conflicts between cars and buses and can be accommodated without impacting the building program. Its challenges are that it requires some tree removal, maybe 2 trees, and it is closest to the adjacent properties along Alpine Street. Another option that also separates the cars and the buses works with the existing intersection of Vassal Lane and Standish Street. Coordinating with this intersection may facilitate the movement of cars through the community and situate arriving and departing cars where pedestrians are accustomed to safely crossing traffic. The curvilinear shape of the ramp may also slow the movement of cars up and down the ramp, also enhancing safety. The positives of this option also include that it doesn't require the removal of significant historic trees, and this option brings the cars closer to the school's front doors. A third option is to have cars access the garage through a ramp where the bus loop is on the west side of the site. This has a few advantages, including removing one curb cut on Vassal Lane and also concentrating traffic on the west side of the site. However, it has a few challenges too, including the mixing of buses and cars, which, as I noted, can raise safety concerns for the children. And there's also a risk that there is too much congestion at this one point of access and that people will not use the drop-off in the garage. That might place more traffic into the neighborhood, like the existing conditions. Chris Bradner will talk about some of our site strategies.
Thanks, Dan. We've been working on other aspects of the site, including prioritizing upfront conversations with the city tree warden and his staff. It is the goal of this project to preserve and protect several trees around the perimeter of the site. We want to build upon the existing landscape to enhance what exists on the south, east, and north sides of the site while creating an even more attractive landscape within the campus. We understand the importance of these mature trees as neighborhood value for shade, buffering, as well as carbon storage both above and below ground. Lastly, we will be working on meeting city requirements for tree replacements and presenting to appropriate review agencies in the coming months. And returning to the outdoor space, you may remember the idea that we were trying to create a school building that is set within a notable landscape. Accordingly, we are continuing to develop a variety of outdoor opportunities for recreation and learning all around the building. Father Callanan Playground will continue to have open space and will feature a baseball diamond, a multi-use field, and a new basketball court. Directly adjacent to the fields, we will continue to develop playgrounds and seating areas that will provide opportunities for families and children of various ages to use the fields and the playgrounds. The play spaces will be located at various spots around the building for ease of student circulation in and out of interior program space. Play spaces will be equipped with age-appropriate features, and materials and use will be natural and man-made for a variety of senses, imagination, and movement. Gardening opportunities will be provided for all ages and abilities. Some areas will be available for staff use directly with their students, while other areas will be coordinated with the City Sprouts program. Outdoor learning can happen anywhere, and the design of the campus will allow for a multitude of formal and informal moments for students to learn and create in large and small groups. Lastly, we'd like to give you a preview of other ideas we're working on behind the scenes. As discussed in the feasibility study, our site's approach to stormwater and its contribution to the community's resiliency will expand beyond our site. We continue to develop the design of an underground storage facility that will collect stormwater from the adjacent city streets. This will help to mitigate flooding in the neighborhood and around the site. We plan on taking advantage of every opportunity to overtly express the environmental design of the project and bring it directly to the students and community, visually through signage and by direct contact, showing processes. The community path continues to connect our site into the larger context of bikeways and walkways. We are working on some other exciting ideas to extend learning from indoors to the outdoors in the courtyards. We are working to create a welcoming and sustainable landscape along Vassal Lane, creating an inviting arrival onto campus and to our new front doors. Having arrived at the front doors, Sean, why don't you walk us through the current plans?
Thanks, Chris. As Carolyn indicated, schematic design is where we begin to organize the building, trying to situate program spaces in the best possible location relative to the constraints and opportunities of the site. We're also trying to create significant synergies between each of the program spaces, as I'll discuss in a moment. To do this, we've been working closely with the faculty and the staff of the schools and other representatives of CPS and the city to continue to gather information and gather their comments on the plans as they develop. While we are organizing the plans, we are also beginning to shape each space and test some of the furniture in these spaces to make sure that they are working effectively. This is an exciting time, as it's a very significant part of creating a high-performance learning environment. Let's take a look at the plans. First, let's take a look at the overall organization of the building. Like a village, we've organized each school into several different academic neighborhoods that will scale the learning environment to better support the students and the faculty. These neighborhoods create the southern wing of the building. For example, 3 neighborhoods serving the Tobin School are stacked on the east side, shown in the light blue color, creating a 3-story mass. Vassal Lane's 3 neighborhoods, likewise, are on the west side of the southern wing, shown in the darker blue. These 3 are stacked on top of a neighborhood for the DHSP preschool and community school programs. This stacking enables us to conserve precious outdoor space on site and also to keep the youngest children on the lowest level of the building. The heart of the school, or the crossroads of the building, ties these neighborhoods to the shared program spaces in the north wings, including the gyms, dining spaces, and auditorium. The heart also features the library and learning commons for each of the 2 schools. Let's look at each level in a little more detail. On the ground floor, you can see the great diversity of space sizes and types that we are organizing within the building. While we don't have the time to go through each space individually, let's further explore the overarching organizational strategy. On the ground floor, we have the 2 front doors, one for the Tobin and one for Vassal Lane. Each set of doors leads to a distinct entry lobby that then leads to each school's main office. On this floor, we see the Tobin's main office. As we'll see in a moment, Vassal Lane's main office is 1 floor up. This entry sequence is a major enhancement from the existing conditions, and it will lead to better wayfinding and to better security. To the right of the entrances on this level is the Tobin School's Children's House neighborhood, and the Special Start neighborhood integrated into that as well. To the left of the entrance are DHSP's community school and preschool spaces. In the north wing on this level, we have the lower school gym, occupational and physical therapy, dining spaces for each school, and a multi-purpose room for the Tobin and ASD students, as well as a gross motor room for the preschool. As we look at the second floor, we can see the arrival through Vassal Lane's double-height entry lobby, which arrives at Vassal Lane's main office in the center of the southern wing. To the right of that main office is the Tobin School's lower elementary neighborhood, and to the left of the main office is Vassal Lane's 6th grade neighborhood. Each of Vassal Lane's neighborhoods are interdisciplinary, featuring classrooms, science labs, and support spaces. This will help reduce the perceived scale of the school and the building, fostering stronger relationships for the students and the faculty. The learning commons for both schools are adjacent to each of these neighborhoods, and they anchor the heart of the school. And in the north wing, we have located visual arts and lower school music. District offices for OSS and the science department are located here as well, and there's also a professional development space for the Tobin and Vassal Lane faculty in this wing. The third floor features the Tobin's upper elementary school neighborhood and Vassal Lane's 7th grade neighborhood. Steam and video production spaces anchor the heart of the school, and the auditorium and the upper school gym are located in the north wing. And on the 4th floor, we have spaces focused on Vassal Lane, like the 8th grade neighborhood and upper school music program. The balcony for the auditorium is also on this level. And moving to the lowest level of the building, you can see that the car drop-off arrives into the garage, and students from here will move into the lobbies for each school. On this level, we also have storage and workshops for the building and the district. And of course, we have parking for the staff. Dan, why don't you tell us about some of the sustainability aspects of the project?
We continue to respond to the aspirational environmental performance goals laid out in the feasibility study. We'll design a net zero emissions building and are striving to create a net zero energy building, one that not only burns no fossil fuels on site, but which also produces energy to meet its power, heating, and cooling needs. To do so, we've been working to orient the building to take advantage of low winter sun angles and create shading for high summer sun. We've been studying how the windows and solar shades can support learning environments while lowering the energy demand of the building. And this is the design phase, where we are beginning to study the pros and cons of various heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system options. Other net zero design considerations include reducing the embodied carbon of the building by selecting materials that take less energy to produce, for example, using wood where typically steel might be used. We will soon be having conversations about the operations of the building and how the occupants can contribute to an efficiently run building. There are many educational opportunities both in the building and on the site that can be integrated into the school and playground design. Omar will walk us through some of that.
Hello everyone, my name is Omar Calderon. I'm a design principal with Perkins Eastman, and I am in the care of this project. Thanks, Dan and Sean. Let's take a look at some of the analysis that is contributing to the design of the exterior of the building. This is the first look we are taking at the exterior design, and certainly will not be the last. We share here some initial observations to begin the dialogue and discern the importance of a building that not only communicates the high aspirations of the learning community within, but is a good neighbor and a good fit in the community context. We have high hopes for the exterior design of the building, driven by several key goals, including the creation of daylight-filled, high-performance learning environments inside the building. Equally important, however, is the idea that the building should not only be in this place, but that the building is distinctly of this place. So let's take a few minutes to explore how we might achieve this. How do we begin to design a building that it's of its place? Well, it begins with a creative analysis, a process that seeks to understand the local history and the heritage of a place. So for example, when we look at the geology and the hydrology of the site, with Fresh Pond being an important participant, we ask ourselves, what does it mean to be a neighbor to Fresh Pond? To find a bit of understanding, we discovered that Fresh Pond had its origin way back at the end of the Ice Age. As they retreated north, the glaciers left large pockets of ice that subsequently created kettle holes and kettle lakes like Fresh Pond. Interestingly, Fresh Pond is still part of the potable and drinking water system for Cambridge. More recently, the geology of the site influenced another development around Fresh Pond and on the site. Extensive clay deposits on and around the site drew brick makers to quarry and manufacture bricks for masons working in the local building trade. As the site was excavated for raw materials, several buildings likely occupied the site to process materials, create, and dry the bricks. Once the brick industry moved onto other sites, the quarry it left behind became an opportunity to deal with the waste generated by a growing city. For years, household waste was dumped on the site and was ultimately covered up. In the late 1960s, the site became attractive to address the need for new schools in Cambridge, with the opening of the John M. Tobin School in 1971 and Father Callanan Playground. The site became largely what we see today. However, evolution continued as the programming in the building changed to address the needs of the city's students. In 2008, the Tobin Montessori Children's House opened, offering a self-guided, inquiry-based curriculum, and it was joined in 2012 by the Vassal Lane Upper School. We find the Montessori materials very beautiful. We take inspiration from the Montessori philosophy, which emphasizes the use of specific materials that have an engaging and tactile quality. These emphasize simple, beautiful, and natural materials. Now, if we were to design a building that matched this aesthetic, what would that look like? So in summary, this very brief history of the site has taken us on a tour of the geological legacy, the materials that shaped the site, primarily water and clay, the industrial past and the modular building materials that were created from the very fabric of the site. But this story is actually not quite finished as the site continues to evolve. This connection to the very makeup of the site and the industrial past inspires us as we begin to think about the materiality of the building. We ask ourselves, can we create a building that references the deep geology of the site and the modular building materials once created here from those resources, while also honoring the continuing and forward-facing evolution of the site as it serves the needs of the community? In addition to the history and materials of the site, other factors also inspire the way the building should look and help to root it deeply to this specific place. For example, the building is being designed to conserve significant amounts of energy relative to conventional school buildings. We're striving to reduce consumption as we target an aggressive EUI of 25 kilowatts per square foot or less. But to achieve these goals, we begin by making a building that conserves resources through an energy-efficient building envelope, and by inspiring behaviors in the residents within that reduce plug loads and encourage the use of daylight. A significant insight that came out of the community reviews, you might remember, was the preservation and enhancement of the Father Callanan playground. And in reviewing this site plan, it can be appreciated how the school building really defers to the play spaces and green spaces, to the point that in the green in this illustration really surrounds the majority of the building. Great daylighting is derived by response to how the sun moves across the site. Orienting the program of the building in the east-west axis, as we have here, allows us to create north and south-facing facades that carefully control sunlight to enter the building. Our goal of creating a high-performance learning environment is enhanced by designing windows that are specifically organized to bring in diffuse natural light, while other windows can provide opportunities for views out and enhancing the experience of the children within. But we're also sensitive to the scale of the neighborhood, as is evident in the massing of the building. As you can see, the southern facade is not a singular long facade, but is rather a series of distinct planes and volumes that push and pull to begin to describe the academic neighborhoods and classrooms within. We have found that with this building, every side has a role to play and a responsibility to observe. Approaching the playground and school from Concord shows us that the school is significantly set back from the street. Remembering that this is the side of the building that has the gymnasium, the cafeteria, and auditorium, the so-called large spaces of the school, the scale of the building here can afford to be a little grander, more civic, if you will. On the Vassal side of the building, the story is a little bit different. Instead of one single long, large building, we're striving to create a collection of smaller buildings set within a notable landscape, almost as if the building was made of smaller buildings that happen to be connected together. This collection of buildings becomes smaller in scale on the east side of the site, where the building will be closest to the adjacent houses. Conversely, the scale steps up as we get closer to the adjacent commercial and industrial uses on the west side. While we're breaking the building down into discrete volumes and masses, we can leverage the sun to provide us with a common element to tie the composition together. And speaking of the sun, we are optimizing every surface available for power generation. We're also exploring the design of photovoltaic trellises that may provide us with a practical and elegant way for the building to meet the sky. These are some examples of how this idea has been applied to buildings in other places. With some of the PV visible from the ground, we can tangibly also demonstrate that the city is really committed to sustainability and the buildings that it's purporting to build. and that is really committed to inspiring students in the community to integrate these systems into the curriculum and into their homes. While we are reducing energy consumption, we are also exploring how to optimize the power generating capacity of the building. These photovoltaic systems will help the building pursue net zero energy. Net zero energy will help us reduce the building's impact on the environment and our health and well-being. Now, let's bring all of these ideas and analyses together and see how they can begin to shape and inspire a design for the building exterior. For example, here you see that idea of meeting the sky, building a building design that has a base, a middle, and a top, complemented by a pronounced way of meeting the ground in the form of the masonry material that you see here. This works in harmony with the horizontal breaks in the massing that I mentioned before by reducing the perceived mass of the building vertically. This creates a more interesting scale visually, and it enhances the experience as you get closer to the building. So we're studying the use of a masonry material that enhances the visual richness and tactile quality of the base of the building as pedestrians walk by or get close to the building. And the windows further reduce the scale of the building, with the upper windows bringing in natural light and more playful windows lower where the children are so that they can look out across the site. Inside, you can see in this school that used a similar approach to window design, that the upper windows provide generous, glare-free, diffuse natural light, while the lower windows provide opportunities to create smaller scale places and views that inspire learning. With recent developments in computer modeling and a lot of this analytical software becoming more and more available, we have been studying and refining the size and location of each window and shading devices and light shelves to optimize the building to approach daylight autonomy without increasing glare. Research has demonstrated that children learn more effectively in a well-daylit learning environment. Then, as we walk up to the front doors from Vassal, through the landscape on the Vassal Lane side of the building, you can see all of these ideas coming together, from the different masses to the base, middle, and top created out of the materials that are related to the site, the differentiated windows for daylight and views, to the trellis featuring the photovoltaics, which are providing power for the building. As you walk up to the front door, there will be a clear indication of where the front door is naturally, but there's a canopy that receives you and shelters you from the elements during inclement weather as you approach the building. You can also appreciate in this view how the building, even along Vassal Lane, is set back a significant amount to provide for that landscape experience as you approach the building. Now, if you were to stand over in the intersection of Vassal Lane and Standish and look towards the school, this would be the view. And you can see here illustrating how some of the pedestrian movements would be organized to also help facilitate the safe movement of vehicles in and out of the building into the garage. And so you can see the curb cut there aligns with Standish, which is where the existing curb cut is located today. Therefore, just maintaining similar patterns of movement around the site, but also introducing that garage entrance that would facilitate all of the vehicular movement to be within the site of the building and immediately below the first floor. Here's a view of the building looking from Concord diagonally across the site, and on the left-hand side we see one of the pedestrian paths that will be maintained to maintain that pedestrian connectivity and through the site and into the site. And some of the trellises, or an idea behind trellises that would add on to the photovoltaic panels that are on the roof already to increase the power generation capacity of the site. This also once again illustrates the scale of the building perhaps being a little bit different, but also almost having like a gymnasium that feels like a pavilion that happens to be adjacent to or sitting on the playground. Now, if we were coming in from Fern, perhaps on a bicycle, we would engage with the multimodal path there that exists today on the site. And so when you look at the site plan, you would also appreciate how we have extended that so that there's through connectivity, multimodal through connectivity through the site. And so we see here an individual on a bicycle making its way through. And then on the left-hand side, we see some of the play field areas, baseball and soccer areas, and a piece of the trellis, or an idea behind this trellis concept that might be just in a few places along the site, supporting photovoltaic panels to, as I said before, enhance the power generation of the site, but also provide shading for spectators of the play that's taking place. And here is a view of the pedestrian pathway from Vassal Lane along the east side of the site, and showing the version of the ramp that would be in front of the site that would connect with Standish. And so the idea here is that we can aptly landscape the zone, minimize the impact of the automobile entrance, really, in fact, hiding it completely from view from this side of the building. But more importantly, providing and maintaining a safe pedestrian pathway that does not have to negotiate cars. You can also see here how the scale of the building drops down to 3 levels, and then remembering that we have the adjacent homes along Alpine Street, trying to reduce the scale of the building to fit in with the scale of the neighborhood. And so that rounds up this part of the presentation, and we, as always, look forward to continuing the conversation with you as the design develops.